On her wedding day, she was abandoned. Discover how an unexpected millionaire changed everything. Emily stood at the altar, her heart shattered, draped in the heavy silk of an ill-fitting wedding dress. The whispers of the townsfolk curled around her like the crisp autumn air that rustled the golden leaves outside the church. "She deserves better," they murmured, eyes filled with pity that pierced deeper than any wound. Just moments ago, she had been woven into dreams of her future with Tom, the man she thought would be standing beside her. Then he turned away, abandoning her for the lure of wealth, his voice echoing in her mind, "I need more." In that instant, joy turned to embarrassment, her heart transformed into a cage of despair. Focused on the classroom, she conjured a spark of hope for herself. There, surrounded by bright-eyed students, she was a guiding light. Each lesson she imparted was a reflection of her own battle with resilience. Yet, the weight of her abandonment lingered, a gray cloud dulling her once bright spirit. The corners of the old school held secrets. Their dusty air was a contrast to the world outside, where she felt trapped in expectations. She would teach them more than mathematics or history. She would teach them to rise from disappointment. But as she flashed smiles and delivered inspiring words, the ache of her own failures gnawed at her, suppressing her laughter. One afternoon, grading papers in the local toffee shop, Jack approached, his tousled hair catching the light, a smile that felt warm and genuine. He was tall, his presence comfortable yet commanding, and as they spoke, she found solace in their conversation, a lullaby to her troubled thoughts. The holidays were approaching, and he shared stories of his past, of his rise from humble beginnings. There was something easy about him. He offered mentorship, urging her to dream beyond her classroom walls, to embrace ambition. For the first time since her heartbreak, Emily felt a flicker of excitement, yet doubt clawed at her insecurities. Could she challenge herself? Before they continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Emily embraced Jack's encouragement, but Rachel's shadow loomed over her. The memories of her old college rival rang like bells, sharp and insistent. Rachel's voice echoed critiques in her mind, riddled with the laughter of competition and feelings of inadequacy. Just as Emily felt herself rising, Rachel's presence clawed her back into a pit of doubt. Could she stand tall against the expectations of society that seemed to define success by wealth and privilege? The contrast between her modest life and Jack's opportunities fed her anxiety. As the competition approached, Emily's anxiety deepened. When a family secret unfolded, intertwining her past with the future she wanted, everything shifted. It challenged the narrative she had built around her worth, igniting a fire within, but also heightened her fear of failure. Just as she began to reclaim her truth, Rachel's cruel words echoed louder, preparing to pounce on her vulnerabilities. Now, standing once again on the precipice of introspection, Emily faced an exam that could redefine her identity. The looming question electrified the air. Would she harness the courage to pursue her truth, or would the specters of her past and present unravel everything? The tension coiled around her, ready to snap. With every heartbeat, she felt the universe conspiring to push her forward, yet the echoes of fear held her back firmly in place. She had to make a choice. The future beckoned, but would she dare to answer? With an overwhelming mixture of trepidation and resolve, Emily approached the crossroads of her life. The warmth of the coffee shop now served as a backdrop to her internal tempest. Each corner gripped memories of her broken engagement, intertwining with flashes of excitement Jack had ignited within her. But the shadows cast by Rachel loomed heavy, a relentless echo reminding her of past competitions and ceaseless comparisons. As the days wore on, Emily found herself awakening to the prospect of self-discovery. The abandoned wedding dress hung in her closet, a vestige of a life she thought she wanted. Yet a question nestled within her mind. What if her own aspirations could reshape her destiny? In a moment of reckless clarity, she decided to use the upcoming competition as a vehicle for change, an opportunity to forge her own path. It wasn't merely about winning, it was about reclaiming her narrative, a chance to assert herself beyond society's rigid definitions of success. In the classroom, her lessons transformed as she infused them with real-world relevance. Rather than merely teaching academic concepts, she began weaving her own story into the fabric of her curriculum. "Class," she announced one day, her voice steadying with newfound conviction, "failure is merely a stepping stone to success." The glimmer in her students' eyes mirrored the light she had begun to kindle within herself. Each aha moment they experienced fed her determination, reaffirming her newfound purpose. Jack became her sounding board, challenging her assumptions about herself while sharing insights from his own journey. "You need to see your worth beyond the mirror," he urged one afternoon, rolling a pen between his fingers. "Make a list of what you want without the constraints of others' expectations." It felt absurd at first, but as Emily scribbled down ambitions beyond her current grasp, travel, writing, entrepreneurship, she uncovered a reservoir of dreams previously buried beneath layers of self-doubt. But Rachel proved to be a persistent reminder of her insecurities. The competition loomed closer, and Emily found herself avoiding her rivals' efforts to engage. A gathering at a local gallery provided a tense encounter, as Rachel, cloaked in confidence, approached Emily with an imperceptible smirk. "You're really going through with this?" she taunted lightly, her words prickling Emily's resolve. The air teetered on the edge of confrontation. Elizabeth's heart raced, caught between anger and the urge to retreat. Just as she summoned the courage to respond, she felt a hand on her shoulder, Jack's reassuring presence grounding her. "Emily," he said softly, "don't let her dictate your worth." Empowered by that singular moment of support, Emily stood tall. "Yes, I am, and I'll show you that there's more to success than what's on display." The words flowed with defiance, shoving the doubt deeper into a place where it no longer mattered. Returning home later that night, Emily reflected on the encounter. Each determination she had etched on that list became a battle cry. Fear pulsed through her like a heartbeat, a reminder of what she stood to lose and gain. Jack's encouragement underscored a truth dawning on her. The competition was not a mere contest of skills, but a crucible for her rebirth. However, as she prepared for the challenge, visions of Tom's dismissive face surfaced, taunting her with reminders of abandonment and worthlessness. With each attempt to quell that voice, another would rise, this time whispering of hope. Could she truly transform this pain into power? The night before the competition, Emily lay awake, grappling with her mixed emotions and vivid dreams of the woman she aspired to be. Would she emerge victorious, or would she stumble in the faces of her fears? The tension escalated within her, an impending confrontation with both herself and her past awaited. As dawn approached, casting tentative light through her window, Emily prepared for what lay ahead. One thought crystallized with striking clarity. The moment of truth was near. Would she rise like a phoenix from her own ashes, or remain ensnared in a web of doubt? As she clasped her notebook filled with plans and aspirations to her chest, determination swelled within her, propelling her forward toward an uncertain future. The competition loomed ahead, yet so did an opportunity to be reborn once more. As the first rays of sunlight broke through her window, Emily felt their warmth seep into her doubts. Today was not just a day of a competition. It was the day she would step into the role she had yearned for all her life. The version of herself she had only glimpsed in moments of clarity. The echoes of self-doubt still echoed in her mind, but they were quieter now, drowned out by the weight of her aspirations pressing against her heart. She slipped into comfortable clothes, a stark contrast to the wedding dress she had once chosen for a life that never came to be. Each piece of fabric became a symbol of her commitment to herself, a canvas on which she would draw her new identity. Standing before the mirror, she felt an unfamiliar sense of power course through her veins. Her reflection looked back with determination. Today was hers. At school, a palpable energy buzzed in the air, students expressing excitement that matched her own. Instead of merely her traditional lesson plan, she devised a strategy that would challenge her students to visualize their futures, just as she was forging her own. Today, Emily announced, each of you will create a vision board of your dreams. Anything you can imagine is possible. The classroom transformed into a hive of creativity. As the scissors snipped and colored pens flew across paper, she couldn't help but smile at the enthusiasm filling the room. Their laughter intertwined with her heartbeat, each joyous note serving to propel her towards her own aspirations. In that moment, Jack entered, a slight weariness shadowing his features. He seemed to sense the vibrancy in the air as he watched her from a distance, a knowing smile breaking across his face. These were the moments that tethered Emily to reality. He came alongside her as she handed out supplies, whispering, "You've turned this room into a sanctuary of possibility." At that moment, the bell rang, signaling the end of the day. But for Emily, it marked the beginning of her final countdown to the competition. Armored with the inspiration she had shared with her students, she felt revitalized. The doubts that once saturated her mind began to evaporate, giving way to a fierce resolve. Yet, as excitement and uncertainty gripped her heart, the memory of Rachel resurfaced, like a storm cloud darkening her horizon. Their encounter had left a bitter taste. Whatever mask of confidence Rachel wore, Emily knew it masked insecurities deeper than her own. This competition was not just a test of skill. It was a confrontation with her doubts and an opportunity to redefine herself. After school, she relaxed at home, fervently sketching out her speech for the competition. Each word was imbued with passion, emphasizing her journey and the resilience she was nurturing. It was not just about performance, it was an unveiling of her authentic self. As she practiced in front of the mirror, she felt the stirrings of clarity molding her message into something powerful. That night, as she prepared for bed, Emily opened her notebook to review her list. The dreams she envisioned began to outline themselves with clarity: traveling the world, a book deal, starting a scholarship for underprivileged students. But just as quickly as she fostered excitement, trepidation clawed at her gut. What if she stumbled? What if this was all a fantasy? But then she recalled Jack's words, pushing her to embrace the discomfort of vulnerability. She would let go of those fears, as she had learned to do with her past, the memories that dulled her spark. Giving in to the fear meant allowing Rachel's presence to dictate her worth even more. As sleep embraced her, Emily felt a warmth envelop her spirit. The renewal she sought was within reach. The competition awaited, with her heart pounding in rhythm, ready to break free from the echoes of her past. Yet just before drifting into slumber, one question loomed larger than the others. Would she seize the moment, or would she continue to be a shadow of herself? Tomorrow, she would confront not only the challenge in front of her, but the raw truth of her potential. The scene was set, but as she closed her eyes, uncertainty still lingered. Would she emerge on the other side still whole, or would she lose a piece of herself in the fight? The morning sun had not only risen, but seemed to blaze a trail for Emily as she approached the venue for the competition. Her breath caught in her throat, the excitement and anxiety warring within her. What awaited her inside those walls was as uncertain as the words she had meticulously crafted, words that had almost become sacred to her during the late-night hours of practice. Stepping through the entrance, the atmosphere felt charged, almost electric. Competitors milled about, exchanging nervous glances, laughter, and feigned confidence. Emily caught sight of Rachel across the room, adorned in her signature tailored outfit, a facade of poise gracing her features. This was no longer about just the competition. It had transformed into a crucible of her self-worth. Emily felt the weight of her own identity pushing against her heart. Could she stand tall, not just against Rachel, but against the version of herself that had bowed down to fear for too long? The recollection of her students creating vision boards flooded her mind. They had drawn forth images of futures and aspirations without hesitation. She could do the same. She had to break free from the confines of her own insecurity. With newfound clarity, Emily moved towards the registration desk, her steps growing steadier with every inch. She submitted her name with resolute determination, feeling as if she were signing a contract with herself, one that promised to chase her dreams no matter the outcome. Once assigned her number, she was led to the stage area where contestants shared their speeches. As she watched a peer deliver a polished performance filled with confidence, a pang of self-doubt nagged at her. The edges of her determination began to fray. Maybe this was too ambitious, an illusion of capability that would burst in the face of reality. But Jack's voice echoed in her mind, "Embrace vulnerability." Those words wrapped around her like a protective cloak. When her turn approached, Emily felt as if the room dimmed around her, leaving only her and the spotlight, a stark contrast to the gathering shadows of self-doubt. She stood behind the microphone, grasping the podium, letting the cool wood ground her. The audience was a sea of unfamiliar faces, yet she felt a thread connect her to each one. She wasn't just there to speak, she was there to share her truth. "Today, I'm not just representing myself," she began, her voice steady. "I'm here because I believe in the power of dreams." She felt the ripple of connection in the room as her words flowed. Stories of struggles, triumphs, and aspirations poured forth, each word carrying the weight of her journey, resonating with shared humanity. It felt exhilarating, liberating. She was a vessel of authenticity. Yet, mid-sentence, her gaze landed on Rachel, whose unyielding stare returned a challenge. The tension warps the air between them, igniting a battle of wills. Something shifted inside Emily, a recognition of the fight not just against Rachel, but against the implications of allowing someone else's fear of her courage to dictate her narrative. As she finished, the applause was a rush of sound that swept across the stage. But it was the inner applause, her own validation, that felt like a thunderstorm inside her chest. She had stepped beyond the shadows of self-doubt and tasted a fragment of empowerment that ignited her soul. But as she descended from the stage, the realization struck her. Vulnerability was a double-edged sword. She now had to confront not just Rachel, but the specter of her past that still longed to cling to her like an unwanted shroud. The competition was merely a reflection of the conflict within her. Could she maintain this newfound decisiveness, or would the shadows pull her back? In that moment, a choice crystallized before her. The outcome of the competition mattered little if she managed to find strength in authenticity. But what would happen if Rachel, or anyone else, attempted to dismantle that belief? Emily stepped aside to process, taking a deep breath. Just as she regained her center, she overheard a suggestive whisper meant to slice through her hard-won confidence. How long until she realizes this is just a flash in the pan? Would she let such words infiltrate her mind? The answer burned within her, vivid and alive. She was not merely a participant, she was the architect of her fate. Yet the stakes were rising, and so too was Rachel's influence. The uncertainty loomed. Could she withstand the challenge ahead? Emily leaned against the wall, heart pounding, as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The applause still echoed in her mind, but she could feel the undertow of doubt threatening to pull her back underwater. She had spoken her truth, but what good was authenticity if it could be shattered by someone else's judgment? Watching Rachel accept her own accolades from a distance was torturous. The way Rachel commanded the stage only intensified Emily's internal conflict. Was this mastery of performance something Emily could ever truly embrace? A familiar mental pattern began to rear its head: comparison. What if her words had been lost within the noise, dimmed by the brilliance of someone more refined? Taking a step away from the crowd, Emily closed her eyes and breathed deeply, grounding herself in the moment. She envisioned her students again, their faces bright with hopes and dreams. They had inspired her to believe, not in masks of perfection, but in the messy journey of growth. She could tap into their energy, transforming vulnerability into a strength that would illuminate the way. But how would she deal with Rachel? Her mind spun with possibilities. Emily could confront Rachel directly. She could even try to engage her in open dialogue. But would Rachel treat it as the opportunity it might be? Or would she dismiss it as an attempt to prolong her spotlight? After all, Rachel thrived in an environment defined by competition, and Emily was no more than a pawn in her game. A flicker of determination ignited within Emily. She knew she had to approach this carefully. There was a lesson to learn here, transcending the competition. Avoiding Rachel entirely could seem weak. Distancing herself could mean surrendering control, but confronting her could devolve into yet another clash cloaked in insecurity. Gathering her courage, Emily decided to re-enter the fray, departing from her temporary refuge. Yet her thoughts tumbled as she approached Rachel, who was surrounded by an entourage of admirers. In that moment, the impulse to retreat welled up, whispering that confrontation was too risky. "Emily, you were amazing," an acquaintance piped up, forcing a smile that felt painted on. "I really felt your passion." "Thanks," Emily replied, the words emerging with a shaky exhale. If only she could erase Rachel's looming shadow from her mind. "Why don't you join us?" Rachel's voice cut through the conversation, dripping with feigned enthusiasm as she caught sight of Emily. Her articulation felt sharp, as if each word had been weaponized for amusement. "You've earned some goodwill today. Let's see if you can manage a conversation with the real contenders." Emily's stomach twisted, intertwining anger with the still fresh excitement of her voice on the stage. A part of her wanted to shrink back, to disappear, to avoid what was presumably an attack. But the other part, a stronger part, recognized this moment as her crucible. "Rachel," she began, the name barely above a whisper, yet it rang true within her core. "Can we talk? I think we might both have some common ground." Instantly, the playful atmosphere shifted into awkward silence. Emily felt all eyes diverting to them, the pressure of their audience intensifying. This was her moment, but could she deliver? Common ground? Rachel's eyebrow arched, skepticism dancing in her eyes. It was exactly the reaction Emily had expected, but now wasn't the time for retreat. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger. "We're both striving for excellence in our own ways. I believe we can learn from each other." The challenge hung in the air like a volatile promise. As Rachel crossed her arms, a smirk settled upon her lips. "You think you can learn from me?" As the tension grew, it felt as if both women were standing on the precipice of a new understanding or a new battle. Would Emily leverage this pivotal moment to claim her space, or would she let Rachel's derision eclipse her burgeoning confidence? Emily took a deep breath. The stakes had been set. Seizing control of this exchange could either amplify her growth or unearth her fear. "I'm here for growth, not a fight," she asserted. "How about—" "What do you want?" Rachel's face was inscrutable. And yet, the flicker of rivalry in her eyes remained, charged and potent. What lay beyond this encounter? The stakes had risen, but so had Emily's resolve. As she awaited Rachel's response, doubt crawled at the edges of her mind again, but this time she held fast to her purpose. What was evolving wasn't just a competition, it was a testament to her resilience. Whatever Rachel chose could not dictate the outcome any longer. Would this moment become a bridge for mutual growth or a deepening chasm of hostility? Emily dreaded the answer, but stood firm as uncertainty reigned. Emily maintained steady eye contact with Rachel, her pulse racing. The moment hung thick in the air, saturated with unspoken tension. Rachel's smirk only riled Emily further, igniting something deep within her that she hadn't fully acknowledged up to this point, an unwavering resolve not to be silenced. "What do you want from this conversation?" Rachel's questioning tone added weight to Emily's internal struggle. Would she assert herself or fold beneath Rachel's practiced aggression? "I want to collaborate," Emily said, the words spooling forth with a newfound clarity. "I've seen your work, and while we have different styles, we both care deeply about our impact." A flicker of surprise darted across Rachel's face before she could mask it. "Impact? You think I care about helping others? I'm here to win." The clenching in Emily's stomach threatened to constrict her voice, but she pushed against it. Winning at the expense of others doesn't seem sustainable. There's a strength in lifting one another up. Rachel's expression shifted, caught off guard by Emily's unexpected strength. For a fleeting moment, the crowd seemed to blur, their whispered reactions drifting into background noise. "Lifting one another up," Rachel parroted, her tone laced with skepticism. "You really think that's how this works? In this field, you're either the victor or you're nothing." Emily felt the familiar shadows of self-doubt creep back, trying to suffocate her assertion. But she steadied her breath. This wasn't about the competition anymore. It was about understanding and redefining what success meant to her. "And what if I choose to define success as fostering genuine connections? I can still be a contender within that framework." Rachel laughed sharply, the sound echoing in the space. "Connections? That sounds nice, but it won't get you anywhere." "Maybe," Emily countered, "but it can pave the way for long-lasting influence and trust, which is far more meaningful." Rachel's eyes narrowed, evaluating Emily with discernment. The faintest hint of admiration broke through her skepticism. Was that what Emily saw? Could it be that Rachel recognized the depth in her wisdom? "I don't play nice," Rachel warned, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Neither do I," Emily shot back, her conviction resolute. "But I'm tired of playing by your rules. Let's see if we can establish clear boundaries that encourage us both to shine rather than dim each other's light." The air between them shifted palpably. As Emily held her ground, she began to see the tremors in Rachel's confidence. Perhaps this was the turning point. If Rachel decided to accept the challenge, they might evolve past rivalry. If she rejected it, Emily would know definitively that she could step away without regrets. "Boundaries. How quaint," Rachel replied, but there was a flicker of intrigue in her relentless gaze. "What are you proposing, then?" Emily felt a rush of adrenaline as she considered her next words. This was her chance to mold the narrative of their dynamic. "Let's start with joint projects that showcase our strengths instead of creating separate paths defined by hostility. Let's hold each other accountable and expand our reach." For the first time, Rachel hesitated. The prospect of collaboration, against her nature, stirred something within her. Emily could almost see the gears turning behind Rachel's eyes, as if weighing the novelty of partnership over the security of competition. "You're suggesting we work together?" Rachel's voice was even more incredulous. "Yes," Emily affirmed, her confidence swelling. "What have we got to lose besides ill will?" Rachel's calculating expression softened for a fleeting moment, revealing vulnerability that Emily had never witnessed before. In that shared space, the tension began to dissolve, replaced by the possibility of a newfound alliance. As the minutes ticked by, Emily felt a spark ignite. The confrontation had reframed her understanding not just of Rachel, but also of her own capacity for influence. She was forging a pathway to assert her professional worth without succumbing to bitterness. Yet just as she began to see the possibility of collaboration, Rachel's smile returned, shadowed by cunning resolve. "This may turn out to be interesting, Emily, but don't forget, in the end, I will still prevail." A mixture of apprehension and bold determination flared in Emily's chest. How would she sustain her growth amidst the potential challenges of working alongside someone like Rachel? The boundaries they would navigate were not only professional, but deeply personal. And as Emily prepared for what lay ahead, she knew the real test wasn't just about winning the approval of others. It lay within her, the chance to redefine her identity amidst contrasting values. Would this collaboration truly lead to mutual growth, or was it merely a delicate balance on the edge of chaos? The stakes had only begun to rise, and Emily realized that what had felt like a conflict was transforming into a path to empowerment, if only she could stay true to herself. The next steps loomed ahead, fraught with uncertainty and promise, prompting the question, would the partnership forged in this tension build a legacy of collaboration or threaten to crumble under pressure? Emily left the conversation with Rachel feeling both exhilarated and unsettled. The weight of the moment lingered over her like a dark cloud, testing her fortitude. She had steered the interaction toward a collaborative space, pushing against Rachel's fierce inclination toward competition. But now, as she walked away, she couldn't shake the anxiety gripping her thoughts. The prospect of working together was thrilling, yet daunting. Rachel was known for her willingness to relent. With each step toward her office, Emily mentally rehearsed what their partnership could look like. The idea of joint projects sparked a flame of creativity within her. What if they combined their strengths? Rachel's assertive style, paired with Emily's penchant for empathy, could attract a wider audience, or so she hoped, but doubts twisted inside her. Would Rachel truly honor their agreement? Or would her competitive streak override their mutual goals? Emily couldn't dismiss the reality that Rachel thrived on conquest, and now their success would hinge on harmony rather than hostility. With her stomach churning in a mix of excitement and dread, she entered her small office, the walls decorated with photographs of her past endeavors, a rare glimpse into her journey of growth. As she flipped through her planner, the stack of tasks ahead seemed insurmountable. Joint projects required alignment, mutual investment of time, and, perhaps more crucially, trust. She pulled out a fresh notebook, determined to outline the foundations for their collaboration. "Set intentions," she muttered to herself, jotting down the need for transparency, respect, and accountability. Each word felt like a promise, a commitment to herself and to Rachel that they would not lose what conspired that day. The challenge would be delicate. Navigating the waters of competition while fostering cooperation required sharp focus. This was a pivotal moment in her professional development, and she needed to ensure she did not lose sight of her core values. The clock slipped by unnoticed as she wrote. Ideas flowed as her anxiety subsided, the scribbled notes transforming into a vision for herself. Emily questioned how she could leverage this partnership to not just survive, but thrive. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "Let's meet tomorrow to discuss this further. Bring your ideas." Emily stared at the screen, a rush of adrenaline coursing through her. This was it, the chance to solidify her vision into reality. Yet apprehension lingered. What would Rachel's true motivation be in those discussions? Was she willing to commit, or was this yet another tactical move? As she prepared for bed later that night, her mind raced with anticipation and fear. The crossing paths with Rachel encapsulated a significant crossroads in her career. The collaboration posed profound implications not just for her professional pursuits, but for her personal growth. Just before slipping under the covers, Emily caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection, once fraught with uncertainty, now sparked with fierce determination. This was not just another challenge. It was an opportunity to reshape her identity, to emerge from the shadows and define her presence on her own terms. She closed her eyes, thoughts churning with possibilities. How would their meeting unfold? Would Rachel embrace the proposed boundaries, or would competitive instincts disrupt what could potentially blossom? Restless and eager, sleep eluded her. The true test of her convictions and ability to sustain her self-worth in this new, precarious alliance awaited. Tomorrow would reveal everything. Embracing the uncertainty, Emily felt a stirring within her. She was ready to confront whatever came next. Yet in the back of her mind lingered a haunting reminder. Would the delicate balance between collaboration and competition tip too far into chaos? The next day would not merely be a dialogue. It was setting the stage for a defining chapter of her life. Would Rachel meet her halfway, or would she betray their fledgling agreement? The sun streamed through the blinds as Emily arrived at the office, its rays illuminating the clutter she had considered her working sanctuary. Today was pivotal, not just in terms of the impending meeting with Rachel, but in how it would challenge and reshape her fundamentally. Each piece of paper on her desk echoed her journey, a mix of fears and aspirations, and she dreaded what the day might hold. She took a deep breath, grounding herself before diving into the whirlwind of thoughts that greeted her. How could she steer the conversation with Rachel to be productive without compromising her boundaries? Visibility, credibility, trust, the very pillars of professional partnerships buzzed in her mind like a relentless reminder of the stakes involved. And yet, she felt the tantalizing thrill of possibility. As she arranged her notes, she couldn't help but replay the conversations she and Rachel had shared, both in person and in her head. Rachel was razor-sharp and ambitious. She had seasoned instincts, honed through fierce battles in their industry. Part of her wondered how she might navigate their dynamic without losing herself in the competitive fray. What if Rachel needed her empathetic approach more than her ego allowed? The clock ticked mercilessly onward. With only an hour left until their meeting, Emily felt her pulse quicken. This was more than a routine discussion. It was a test of her ability to lead from within, to establish her authority without resorting to confrontation. Emily was determined to hold her ground while fostering collaboration, to give herself the respect that had often eluded her in previous endeavors. As she reviewed her ideas, a revelation struck. What if they went beyond merely listing goals, and instead built a shared vision together? Knowing Rachel's intense drive, Emily would need to present a compelling sense of shared purpose, a narrative that painted them both as vested partners rather than rivals. With every word she polished on her notepad, she envisioned a path towards synergy and innovation. She felt the tentative flicker of confidence ignite within her once more. Perhaps Rachel's competitive nature could be a catalyst, spurring them to greater heights instead of dragging them down into discord. Just as she was finishing her office, Rachel entered her office. The air shifted, an unseen tension pulsed between them. Emily greeted her with a smile, trying to mask any uncertainty that might betray her resolve. Rachel looked sharp, her business attire radiating authority. But rather than intimidating Emily, it somehow invigorated her spirit. "Ready to share some ideas?" Rachel asked, her tone straightforward, devoid of pleasantries. "Absolutely," Emily replied, prepared to dissect the invisible boundaries that define their interplay. With each idea she presented, accompanied by her vision for their potential collaboration, Emily noticed the flickers of acknowledgement and curiosity cross Rachel's face. Each nod seemed to stir something new in Emily, a growing sense of recognition that she had a seat at the table. But then a curveball emerged. As Emily articulated their joint narrative, Rachel interjected with a proposal that veered toward Rachel's familiar competitive spirit. "What about a friendly contest to launch our first project? The one who generates the most engagement wins." The room grew heavy with anticipatory silence. Emily's initial reaction was a flood of uncertainty, caught between the urge to advocate for their shared vision and the fear of alienating Rachel. Could she risk asserting that this competition was counterproductive, potentially unraveling the bond they had just begun to forge? The moment stretched, time slowing as she weighed independence against collaboration. "Let's focus on a collaborative win instead," Emily finally responded, her voice steady despite the stakes. "Our strengths combined should be our competitive advantage, not split our focus." Surprise flickered in Rachel's eyes, an acknowledgement that this was not just a strategy to win, but a commitment to redefine the rules together. Emily felt emboldened. This was a negotiation not just for their project, but for her own professional identity. The conversation evolved into a back and forth where Emily fought to maintain her ground without diminishing Rachel's input. Yet, as they laid the groundwork for their partnership, Emily couldn't shake the lingering doubt. Would Rachel ultimately embrace this new balance, or would old instincts reawaken? As they wrapped up the meeting, Emily sensed a shift, a space for collaboration seasoned with mutual respect. Yet, the underlying question remained. Would their budding alliance withstand the test of their contrasting natures, or was compromise merely a facade for which they would both have to pay a price? With tension throbbing in her chest, Emily realized that the true challenge awaited just beyond their agreement. The question swirled around her as she stood to leave. Tomorrow's strategy session could either solidify their newfound trajectory or fracture it entirely. What lay ahead was a crossroads, and Emily was prepared to navigate it, but the real test of her mettle was yet to come. Emily awoke the next morning, a quiet fog enveloping her thoughts as she wrestled with the weight of the previous day's decisions. The sunlight filtered in through the window, but instead of warmth, it felt like an uninvited intruder, exposing the uncertainty swirling in her mind. She replayed the moments from her meeting with Rachel, the unexpected proposal that had sparked a fierce internal battle. Each breath felt heavier. Could she really sustain this balance of collaboration with someone so competitive? The fear of misjudgment loomed, a dark specter whispering that she might be risking her hard-earned credibility. What if their last conversation had merely placated Rachel's ambitions, not truly transformed them? Nevertheless, Emily reminded herself that this wasn't just about surviving their partnership. It was her opportunity to mold it into something greater than the sum of its parts. Clenching her fists in determination, she affirmed her resolve. She had to approach today's strategy session with clarity and purpose. As she prepared, a familiar chorus of anxiety thrummed in her chest, pushing her to mentally rehearse each talking point. Today wasn't merely about her ideas, it was about asserting her vision while still weaving a thread of partnership with Rachel. She composed an email to her team, gathering their insights and constructive feedback, igniting a sense of collective ambition. This was their project, and she could foster the support needed to weather potential storms. When she arrived at the conference room for the strategy session, the low buzz of conversation filled the air. Instead of feeling daunted, Emily absorbed the energy around her. Here was affirmation that collaborative victory was possible. As the team members settled in, Emily felt a rising tide of confidence. Rachel entered, her presence commanding immediate attention. Emily noted how she stood before them, a dynamic figure who could either be an ally or an obstacle. The way Rachel commanded respect ignited a fierce determination within Emily to stand shoulder to shoulder rather than retreat into a shadow. "All right, everyone, let's get started," Rachel announced, her voice filled with authority. "I hope you're all ready for a bit of healthy competition for our new initiative." The words sparked a tightness in Emily's stomach. Here it came, the very instinct that could fracture everything they had just begun to build. With every ounce of resolve, Emily interjected. "Before we dive into specifics about potential contests, I'd like to focus on the collective strengths of our team and how we can best position each other for success," she said, her tone resolute yet inviting. Rachel's eyebrows raised, and the challenge flickered between them like static electricity. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Emily, but competition often fosters creativity. Why not harness that energy? This confrontation loomed over Emily. Was she willing to stick to her guns, risking further opposition? She squared her shoulders. Her heart raced, but her mind was steady. Competition can ignite sparks, but if our underlying focus isn't aligned, it could lead us to divide rather than conquer. Let's design our plans to promote collaboration first by pooling our resources. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to slice through. Emily was acutely aware that she wasn't merely fighting for a project, she was challenging deep-seated beliefs ingrained in their corporate culture. But the silence in the room shifted as a few team members nodded, feeding off her conviction. Rachel's eyes narrowed as she processed Emily's insistence. I suppose, if we can find a unifying framework, we can explore a balance, she finally replied, albeit with measured reluctance. With that reluctant concession, Emily sensed a shift that was invigorating. It would take ongoing resolve to persuade Rachel, but now she had established herself as a resilient player. The path forward was no longer a mere negotiation, but a quest for a shared vision. As the session progressed, the dialogue grew more fruitful. Emily harnessed this growing synergy, and for the first time, she felt like an architect of their future, not just a participant. Her fear began to morph into something more potent, an energy she could transform into action. But beneath the excitement, a troubling thought began to fester. If Rachel would make concessions, what was the cost of her ambition? As the meeting concluded, Emily stood at a crossroads once more. She knew they had taken a step toward a new horizon, yet with Rachel's competitive spirit so palpable, how long before old instincts reasserted themselves? What lay ahead would test her resolve more profoundly than she anticipated. The path was fraught with uncertainty, and Emily braced herself for the unknown challenges that would emerge from this partnership. Would she keep the bond of collaboration intact, or would rivalry crack the very foundation they had just begun to build? Today's small victory may have sowed seeds of change, but the true test awaited just around the corner, and Emily was compelled to prepare for whatever storm might come next. As the days unfolded, Emily found herself immersed in a new reality, one sculpted by ambition and collaboration. With Rachel, they built the project from the ground up, combining their contrasting styles into something innovative and engaging. The initial meetings, once fraught with tension, transformed into brainstorming sessions teeming with creativity and mutual respect. They were no longer mere rivals, they were partners, navigating their professional landscape together. The project was a resounding success, resulting in a surge of engagement and support from the community. Emily's visions, initially timid, bloomed into tangible realities. Her dreams of initiating a mentorship program for students began to take form, mirroring the collaboration they had cultivated. It was exhilarating to witness not only the growth of their work, but also her own evolution. Emily discovered that her voice held weight. It had the power to shape narratives rather than merely echoing her insecurities. During team meetings, ideas flowed freely, and she often initiated discussions that highlighted their combined strengths. In these moments, she saw Rachel in a new light, a dynamic force, yes, but one that thrived when paired with an equal partner. The energy was infectious, igniting Emily's resolve to push boundaries further. The recognition soon followed. A featured article in a local publication showcased their project, celebrating both women as innovative leaders. As Emily read the profile, her heart swelled with pride, not just for the accolades, but for the affirmation of her journey. She was no longer the woman left at the altar, bound by expectations set by others. She had conquered her fears, rewriting her story with grit and determination. But Emily's growth extended beyond professional achievements. She began engaging with her students in new ways, inviting them to co-create alongside her. This interaction became a source of inspiration. She saw their eyes light up as they realized the potential within them, reflecting the evolution she had experienced herself. Emily incorporated workshops where her students learned not just academic subjects, but also skills in collaboration and leadership. They were building futures, and in doing so, she was helping herself build hers. In those sessions, she often shared her own stories of failure and triumph, revealing the rawness of her past to demonstrate resilience. By doing so, she illuminated the truth that vulnerability was a strength rather than a weakness. Emily realized that the setbacks had not defined her. They were mere elements of a path leading to greater potential. Meanwhile, Rachel began to shift her perspective as well. Their partnership had nurtured a different kind of competitive spirit, one that prompted them both to grow. While there remained challenges, the commitment to wielding their competitive edges productively became the heartbeat of their collaboration. They operated within a framework of mutual respect that allowed both their strengths to flourish. As the school year culminated, Emily received the Innovative Educator Award, a recognition that encapsulated all that she had accomplished. Standing before an audience filled with peers, she felt surges of gratitude wash over her. She addressed the crowd, sharing her journey, the importance of dreams, and the power of collaboration. Jack stood in the crowd, a proud smile on his face, having witnessed Emily's transformation firsthand. While her past had anchored her within the confines of fear, her present was buoyed by freedom and ambition. When she stepped down, the applause was deafening, yet it was the inner applause, the steadfast sense of self-worth, that roared the loudest. She achieved not only recognition, but an unwavering belief in her abilities. Emily had pronounced her identity distinctly. She was not defined by someone else's vision, but by the vivid reality she chose for herself. That night, as she reviewed her journey in her journal, she paused to reflect on her once broken heart. The shadows that had haunted her began to fade, replaced by the brilliance of possibilities ahead. What had felt like an ending, a moment of despair, had shifted into a beginning filled with purpose. For the first time, Emily embraced the unknown with open arms. The landscape before her shimmered with potential, and the future felt like a canvas waiting eagerly for her to paint her story. This transformation was her finest achievement. She had emerged not just as a professional, but as a woman unafraid to seek her own definition of success. She had not only conquered the fears born of doubt and abandonment, but had cultivated a legacy of empowerment, both for herself and her students. As she closed the journal, Emily understood deeply that she wasn't just living her life. She was crafting a narrative of resilience, shaping a legacy that transcended her past. Now was the next chapter. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share what this story meant to you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.